Hello and welcome to this week's video homework. This week, I have a question that we can try to answer. It concerns two things that are fairly unique to living things. How do we grow, or how do we heal after we've been injured? How do these things happen in living organisms? In this time lapse, we can watch bee larvae starting to grow and develop. And you can see that they're getting bigger and bigger. And my question is, how? How do living things get bigger? I can see when we're zoomed in that there are smaller parts that are getting bigger, but where does that biggering stop? Here's another time lapse of a child getting bigger and aging. Now, where are these parts that are getting bigger? Are they the cells? Are individual cells just growing in size? Now, we started off at the beginning of our life with a single cell. Why are we not just one giant cell? Is it something in those cells that are filling up? Are they getting more stuff inside each cell to make one bigger cell? Are those things inside the cells getting bigger and bigger? Are there molecules? Are the atoms getting bigger and bigger as we age? And it's not just humans, but plants also grow. You can see these leaves getting bigger. As they're getting bigger, what are the parts? Now, it's probably not the atoms that are growing. Physics just says that matter cannot be created or destroyed, so the atoms themselves aren't getting bigger. So where in that process do things grow in living organisms? And is this idea of growth also connected to healing? In this series of photos, this individual gets an injury to his face, and then you can see how that cut starts to heal slowly and gets smaller and smaller. So how do our bodies heal? How do our bodies grow? So the questions that we can really look at are, how do living things grow? How are wounds healed? And really, how do our bodies know how to make each of those different body parts? Like if you get a cut on your hand, how do you know to make each of the different layers of your skin in the right spot? Maybe if we look at how a zygote develops, we can start to get some clues. A zygote is the name of that very first cell that forms from the fusion of a woman's egg and a man's sperm. It's a single cell. And as it grows, it does that. It splits and divides and becomes two cells. And then those two cells, over time, split and become four cells. And as the body progresses, those cells keep splitting and dividing, and splitting and dividing. And they become what's called a blastocyst, which is a little ball of cells that have divided from the original zygote. And so you can see this blastocyst is just a whole bunch of little cells splitting up and dividing and splitting up and dividing. Now, when an organism starts to grow, or each of these cells starts to get a little bit bigger, and you can see the organism starting to get larger and larger. There are two processes that are occurring here: mitosis and cytokinesis. Mitosis is when the DNA is divided up perfectly into two, and cytokinesis is when the cell itself splits into two identical cells. Mitosis only really deals with DNA. So your DNA is what controls all of your traits. Each DNA molecule is called a chromosome. So one long DNA strand is called a chromosome. In humans, we have 46 chromosomes in each of our cells. We got 23 from our mom and 23 from our dad. Long before mitosis, the DNA strand gets copied into two identical DNA strands. So you'd start off as one chromosome, and that gets duplicated into two copies of that exact same DNA strand, that exact same chromosome. So this is still considered a single chromosome, even though it has two mirror copies of itself. And in mitosis, each of those chromosomes are pulled apart. So the DNA inside your nucleus organizes into the center of the cell, and then each side of the chromosome gets pulled apart in preparation for the next set. So each new cell that's going to form has an identical set of DNA. Cytokinesis happens right after mitosis, right after the DNA is split. And in cytokinesis, all of the rest of the cell, the organelles, are divided up, and the cell splits to become two new cells. Now, this process is slightly different in animals and plants. In animals, the cell membrane pinches off to form two new cells. In plants, the cell wall starts to form in the center, and that divides up, and you get two new cells that are split by a new cell wall. This whole life cycle of a cell, or what we call a cell cycle, repeats if more cells are needed. This whole process of mitosis followed by cytokinesis, where the cells split up. If more cells are needed, the cell cycle continues. The cells get bigger. They go through mitosis again. At cytokinesis, you get more cells. The cell grows again, goes through mitosis. The cell splits. And again, that's called the cell cycle. And it's how we make all of these different cells that are in our bodies. So let's go back to those two questions we started with. How do living things grow, and how are wounds healed? In this video, you can see a wound, this cut in the middle, and how the cells are healing together. Each of these circles, these red and yellow circles, are when a cell goes through mitosis and cytokinesis. And over time, the cells grow and push the rest of the cells over because they keep on going through cytokinesis and mitosis until the wound is completely healed in the center. The other question was how do our bodies know how to make each of the different body parts? So again, we can watch how those cells initially start off and just divide and divide and divide until you get that blastocyst. And at this point, each of the different parts of the blastocyst start to differentiate. They start to grow differently. Because once you have hundreds of different cells, or in the case of a whole human, trillions of cells, each of those cells can do a slightly different job and work together to make up a whole organism. So once this blastocyst forms, you can have this outer portion, this outer ring that becomes your skin, and this inner ring, which becomes all the parts inside of your body. Once the embryo first starts to form, there are these different layers. There's the ectoderm, which grows and becomes all of your nerves and the rest of your skin. There's this middle part, the mesoderm, which controls your muscles and your veins and arteries, and then the endoderm, which becomes your digestive system. The fetus begins to grow, and each of those body parts starts to differentiate and become the hands and the arms and the muscles and the organs that become your body. And that can only happen because you have billions and billions of cells that have been going through this process of mitosis followed by cytokinesis to become many, many more cells. So I'm going to leave you with this question. What happens if cell division happens without any control? In this video over here are some cells that are growing normally and going through this process of cytokinesis and division. Now, normally this happens at a very controlled rate, and you only gain enough cells to help your body grow normally. Mitosis and cellular division happen only as often as is needed. So you can start to see some of the cells splitting up and dividing and becoming 2 or 3 or 4 cells, which is the normal rate of cellular division. Now, what happens if the control of this division breaks? Your body starts to make more and more cells. It goes through mitosis and cytokinesis too fast, and you get more cells, followed by more cells, followed by more cells. Now, the problem is these are the exact same cells as your normal body cells. So if we sent in a drug that would be able to kill these cells, because there's too many of them, it would also kill all of your other body cells. And because they're dividing and growing so fast, they take up all of the nutrients that your body needs. And really, these cells are growing so fast that it's hard to fight them because they split and divide and then travel to other parts in your body and split and divide there. This is called cancer. And it's one of the trickiest things that we're trying to figure out, that scientists are trying to figure out how to fight, is how do we stop these cells from dividing so fast? Because any drug that stops them from splitting and dividing, going through mitosis, also prevents your normal body cells from going through mitosis. And mitosis is essential for your body to heal and for your body to grow. So if you have cancer, it's essentially that you are healing and growing too fast, so fast that it actually causes injury and disease. So maybe one day, one of you will be able to go out and figure out a new solution to stop cancer from growing so fast. And that's how we come up with a cure for cancer. I hope all of this was helpful and you found it interesting. I look forward to seeing you next class with some wonderful questions.